Welcome to Growth Strategies on Demand with AirDeck. This week, we explore power messaging in sales, featuring Arsalan Minhas, Regional VP of Sales Engineering at Alfresco. First question is, what is power messaging?
So, what is power messaging? Power messaging is a unique selling skill, which is based on the science how a human brain makes decisions, how your buyer makes decisions. We all know that in sales, it's all about having powerful conversations. It's all about having impactful conversations. Power messaging spices up your conversations so that you can have these impactful and powerful conversations. Sales who practice this technique create a unique buying experience, which sets them apart from the rest of the competition. And they differentiate across every sales conversation in the buying cycle, whether phone, email, online, or in person.
Where do sales teams commonly go wrong in their messaging strategy?
What do you see here? The two numbers, 65 and 35. There was a research which concluded that 65% of the executives give businesses to companies who establish the buying vision. They give businesses to people who tell them why they need to change. They give businesses to vendors who come and tell them about a missed revenue opportunity or a problem which they were not aware of. 35% of the executives admitted that they put all the vendors in a bake-off, where vendors are requested to tell them why they are different, why they are unique, how they are different from the rest of the competitors. You know, what is the problem with the sales? Most of the sales folks only focus on this 35%. You can't sell yourself when you have not sold the buying vision. You can't sell your product when you don't know the problem. You can't sell your solution when the pain is not identified. Both these conversations, why change and why you, are very important in a sales cycle. However, why change needs to happen first before why you conversation take place.
Why is the biggest competition the status quo?
Do you know your biggest competition is the status quo? Most of the times, your customers do nothing. Most of the times, you lose against the status quo. The reason is quite simple. Your customers need a compelling reason to change. Without the compelling reason, no change. This requires sales to focus on early stage executive conversations. These early stage executive conversations should establish the buying vision. This buying vision is necessary to force your customers to think differently and why they need to change.
What is the you phrase?
One of the 6 techniques in power messaging is you phrasing. What is you phrasing? We all know in sales, it's never about us. It's always about you, where you is the customer. During a sales conversation, if you are perceived as outside the tribe, if you are perceived as other, it will be very difficult for you to persuade your prospect. You have to be perceived as part of the tribe. You have to be perceived as the member of the family. And this is where you phrasing comes into the picture. You phrasing focuses on personalizing your message and making it relevant for your prospect. You phrasing is much more than switching from a first or a third person narrative to a second person narrative. Let me explain it with an example. We are used to think in terms of I or me. Whenever we are introducing a new value proposition or launching a new product to the market, the very first thought that comes into our mind, what is in it for me? What's the value for me? What do I want? I want everyone to know this message X. We have to break these typical thought patterns. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of our buyers and think from their perspective. What's the value for the buyer? What is in it for the buyer? How it's going to make the buyer more successful? How the message X is going to land with the buyer. The more we practice you phrasing, the easier it becomes for us to think from a buyer's perspective. And once again, it's never about us, it's all about you.
How do you know if your sales messaging is successful and resonates with your prospects?
Results speak for themselves. I've seen sales and sales engineers who were able to accomplish 2 to 3 times higher deal sizes with power messaging. In the other case, I've seen sales accomplishing 40% better quota performance with power messaging. Last but not least, just ask your customers. They will tell you the difference when you use power messaging versus when you don't use it.
Thank you to our guest on this week's episode. If you want to be featured, contact sales@airdeck.co with a brief explanation of why you think you'd be a good fit for this series. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Growth Strategies webinar series brought to you by AirDeck. Stay tuned for more episodes coming soon, featuring top sales and marketing professionals around the world.